Hi guys, welcome back to our E3 coverage here on Access. Today I'm joined by David. Nice to meet you. Today we're talking Homefront The Revolution. Now, 4 years after the original Homefront, what is the current situation?
So, as you mentioned, we're 4 years past the original Homefront, so the year's 2029, and the KPA are in full control of the United States, and Homefront The Revolution is set in Philadelphia, so the KPA are in complete control, and they've named Philadelphia as their capital city of the occupied United States. It's really symbolic of how dominant they are that they've named, you know, the birthplace of US independence as their capital city. So this is the premise and the backdrop for Homefront The Revolution.
So is that one of the main reasons you chose Philadelphia as the setting for Homefront? You know, story-wise, and what else does that city offer you from a gameplay standpoint?
I mean, obviously it's really relevant because it's the birthplace of independence. It's got several kind of independence-related locations, like Independence Hall, it is the signing of the Declaration, it houses the Liberty Bell, so you'll visit some of these locations as part of the story. And also it's kind of relevant because what better city to ignite the revolution than the birthplace of US independence. So if the resistance is going to form anywhere in the United States, it really makes sense that it forms within Philadelphia. So there's kind of several interesting reasons, you know, that we wanted to kind of choose Philadelphia.
Now in the demo we saw a heavy emphasis on guerrilla warfare. So we're not going to be charging in there in tanks, guns blazing. You've really got to kind of think about how you go in and how you fight. You know, why was that approach to combat so important for you?
I think one of the main reasons is within our game, Homefront The Revolution, we've kind of gone with this kind of free roam sandbox Philadelphia, so kind of trying to get back to that Crytek DNA of you know, kind of larger play areas and doing missions doing kind of several missions at once. But within that, you're really kind of choosing your kind of objectives, and you're really operating within this kind of game world, and it's really about kind of looking at the occupying forces and kind of choosing how you would best want to kind of strike at any given moment. So it's very much about kind of choosing your opportunity and choosing your time to strike, and then kind of trying to blend back into the population. If you don't do that, if you try and take the KPA on at their own game, kind of, you know, go in all guns blazing, you'll be crushed. The KPA have got far superior technology. They've got, you know, drones and watchtowers and all of the other kind of trappings of occupation. So it's really not practical for you as a player to operate within this game world and try and take on the KPA at their own game, as it were.
Sure. And also, visually it looks very, very striking. Obviously, with the Cry engine, you've been able to put a load of detail in there. I guess telling the story visually is quite important for you as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about some of the detail you put in there and what you were trying to achieve with the look of the game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want to try and sell the kind of brutal dystopian game world, so it's very kind of Orwellian, very kind of, you know, almost kind of 1984. And as you mentioned, we've got a fantastic art team that put a huge amount of detail and attention to detail, a huge amount of kind of research, and it's very much about kind of taking Philadelphia and taking the kind of the architecture of Philadelphia and then kind of breaking it down, as it were. It's the kind of ruined Philadelphia, but with all of the KPA infrastructure kind of built, augmented on top of it. And so yeah, there's a, you know, really high emphasis on fidelity and attention to detail and interactivity within that world, the scavenging for items and things like that, and using that kind of game world within the context of being a resistance fighter.
Sure. You mentioned Orwellian as well, and there was a bit in the demo that kind of struck me when your resistance fighter was moving forward. Other Americans didn't seem to be too keen with them. They were telling him to, you know, get out. So it's like, I guess not everyone wants the resistance to succeed. That's a kind of strange state of affairs to have, where they're kind of almost accepting the fact that they've been occupied.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an accurate scenario, right? That at the beginning of the game, you're under the boot of the KPA. You know, this is 4 years into this occupation, and not everybody likes the occupation, but then again, you know, you kind of learn to live with it. The civilians are kind of, you know, if they don't want to be even worse off than they are, the KPA have rounded them up into these ghetto districts, and they're rationing power and, you know, food, and the civilians are really struggling to try and kind of get by day to day. But over the course of the game, what you find is that as you ignite the revolution and as the resistance grows, you get more resistance fighters on your side, so you'll see more resistance fighters within the game world. But yeah, civilians, if you kind of pull the gun out, quite often they'll flee from combat, and you'll get kind of different responses. You saw people kind of backing away and saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Like, you know, are you a resistance fighter and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, over the course of the game, it's kind of an evolving game world, and you see the revolution play out on the streets by the end of the game.
And going back to the open world just briefly, we seem to be seeing this quite a lot in games at the moment. Shooters are going away from the traditional kind of linear model where you go from point A to point B and you shoot whatever's in the way. What do you think, having this open approach to specifically first-person shooters, what does that offer the genre that before we just didn't have?
I mean, you mentioned earlier about the, you know, art fidelity and the fidelity of the environments, and I think what you kind of increasingly seeing nowadays is, I think gamers want to spend time. You spend so much effort building up these game worlds, and you take an interesting premise like Homefront, and it's the right thing to do, to allow people time to explore and to live and breathe the game world a little bit more, not just to kind of be driven through it at 60 miles an hour, you know, racing through all of that. You want to kind of immerse yourself in the game world, and it's important to us as well to put the player in that position. I mean, the whole point of Homefront The Revolution really is to play out that scenario. What would you do if you were an everyman, if you were, you know, just an ordinary guy, and how would you fight back against a really oppressive occupying force? And so yeah, it's really important to try and give players the time and the freedom to play out that scenario.
And also what I found really interesting was the weapon customization, where you there was no menu, you didn't have to go through loads of layers, and kind of just looked at the gun, looked at the weapon, and stuff popped up, and I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all tied in with your guerrilla toolkit and scavenging for these items and getting new kind of blueprints and combining ingredients in different ways to craft, you know, improvised explosive devices and customize your approach. It's really, you know, about kind of, again, existing in this free roam Philadelphia, looking at objectives, and it's really up to you to decide how you want to tackle them at any given moment. So you mentioned it's kind of quite a seamless interface, and that's very much kind of what we want to do, where you kind of look at an objective and you customise your approach depending on, you know, what you want to do at a given moment.
There was also use of a mobile phone as well that was used. The map was on it, and it was also used to kind of tag security cameras, and so can we expect to see a certain degree of stealth in the game as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, clearly going to be part of trying to kind of choose your spot, choose when is the right time to strike. The smartphone is kind of a hub for quite a few kind of operations in the game. You've got the mission tracker, you've got the map, you've got the camera that you mentioned, you saw these. There's several other kind of apps as well that we can probably show and talk about in the future. But yeah, it's a stolen Korean smartphone.
Okay.
Other civilians aren't allowed smartphones. So yeah, this is something that is kind of unique to the Resistance, and you're really using that smartphone to try and subvert KPA technology. Later on in the game, you'll be able to hack into drones and hack into security systems and things like that. Early on in the game, it's very much about just the nuts and bolts of, you know, maybe bricking CCTV cameras and throwing bottles at things and smashing things, breaking open padlocks, rather than the kind of the high-tech solutions to problems.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you so much for talking to us. The game's looking amazing. That is Homefront The Revolution. If you want to see more videos from E3, we've got absolutely loads on our channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you again very soon.